In the Dialogue of the Savior, a Gnostic text suppressed for over 1,000 years, Mary left behind a teaching so precise, so specific, so dangerously exact, that I still don't fully understand how it survived at all. And then I stopped asking how it survived, because the moment I understood what it actually said, the more important question became, why did no one ever tell you? Your body carries your divine origin inside it right now. Not as a feeling, not as a belief you adopt, as a structural reality, encoded into 4 specific points in your physical form that have been present and active and waiting since the moment you arrived in this life. 4 locations, 4 distinct functions, 1 complete circuit that, when activated in sequence, does something that no ritual, no practice, no external teaching can replicate. It returns you to the direct experience of what you actually are, beneath everything the world has layered over you. You have been touching these points your entire life. In your most broken moments and your most luminous ones, something in you reached for these exact coordinates without instruction, without knowledge, without anyone telling you they existed. Your hands knew. Your body knew. And every time they did, every time your hand landed on one of these 4 points, something in you was activated that your mind had no language for. The only thing missing was someone finally telling you what your body has been trying to say. I am not asking you to believe this. I am asking you to stay with me through all 4 points, because as these 4 points unfold, something in your body will already be responding. Not because I convinced you, because it was always true, and some part of you has always known it. Mary's entire understanding of the human body started from a premise that most people have never been given access to. She didn't see the body as a vessel you were poured into. She didn't see it as a temporary house for a soul passing through. In the Dialogue of the Savior, the teaching is clear. The body is a living sacred map. It doesn't just carry you through the world. It carries the memory of where you came from, before the world existed for you at all. The Emerald Tablet, that ancient document of compressed esoteric knowledge that has survived every attempt to bury it, contains a teaching that goes far deeper than the line most people quote. Beneath its famous surface is a precise understanding that the human body is a complete microcosm. Not a symbol of the cosmos, not a metaphor for it, a literal compression of every divine structure that exists in the universe, folded into flesh and bone and breath. Every sacred geometry, every divine proportion, every axis of creation, compressed inside you waiting. And ancient Persia knew this too. The Zoroastrian concept of the Fravashi, one of the oldest spiritual frameworks on earth, describes a divine pre-existing blueprint of the soul that lives encoded within the body itself. The Fravashi is not something you earn or develop. It arrived with you. It is the divine original of which your physical life is the expression. You were never an empty vessel waiting to be filled with meaning. You came here already full, already mapped, already carrying the coordinates of your own origin inside your body. I think the most dangerous idea ever suppressed wasn't a political idea. It was the idea that your body already knows God and always has. It begins at the very top, the crown of your head, what Mary called the gate of the Father. This is not a metaphor. In the Dialogue of the Savior, the teaching describes the soul's descent through light, a movement downward from the pleroma, the divine fullness, into physical incarnation. And that descent enters the body from above, through this exact point. The crown is where the divine first touched you. It is your original entry wound into human existence, the place where the infinite compressed itself small enough to fit inside a body. And that compression happened here, at the top of your head, the moment you arrived. The Gnostic concept of pneuma, the divine breath, the spirit substance, is precise about this. It is not a poetic way of saying soul. It describes a literal spiritual substance, and this point at the crown is where it entered, where it still lives, where the connection between what you are in this life and what you are beyond this life remains open, even when forgotten. When this point is forgotten, and most people forget it completely, the symptoms are unmistakable. A chronic sense of disconnection, an identity that feels borrowed rather than owned. The hollow feeling that life is happening to you rather than through you. You move through days and years, and the world feels like a place you are visiting rather than a place you belong to. That feeling is not depression. It is not weakness. It is a gate that has never been opened. The activation Mary described is not complex. Silence. A single breath drawn upward with full intention. Your awareness placed at the crown not as a thought, but as a presence. The way a key doesn't think about the lock, it simply enters the space it was made for. The moment your hand or your awareness touches this point with full intention, the gate responds. Not as imagination, as sensation. Most people go their entire lives never once directing their awareness upward, and I genuinely believe that single shift alone changes everything about how you move through the world. Because the gate doesn't need to be built, it only needs to be remembered. But entering is not enough. Something inside must receive what comes in. From the crown, the teaching moves deeper, to the center of your chest. Mary called this point the seat of the true self. And the word seat is deliberate, not the emotional heart, not the place where feelings live. The spiritual heart, the organ of gnosis, of direct knowing, of recognition that bypasses every layer of thought and analysis, and lands somewhere so deep in you that it doesn't feel like learning, it feels like remembering. Valentinus, the 2nd century Gnostic theologian, whose understanding of the inner life of the soul was so precise and so threatening that the early church spent decades systematically dismantling his entire framework, taught something that has never left me since I first encountered it. He said the heart is not the organ of feeling. It is the organ of divine recognition. The brain analyzes. The brain compares and categorizes and builds arguments. But the heart remembers. It knows things the mind has never been taught, and it knows them because it was knowing them before the mind existed. The dialogue of the Savior carries this thread explicitly. The soul does not learn its way back to its divine origin. It recognizes its way back. The path home is not built through knowledge or ritual or discipline alone. It is walked through recognition, and this point in the center of your chest is where that recognition lives in the body. When Mary taught about this point, she said something that completely reframes what you think you are doing when your hand goes to your chest. She said you are not comforting yourself. You are not self-soothing. You are calling your origin home. That single act of touch, deliberate, aware, intentional, is the difference between the heart as a biological organ and the heart as a living instrument of divine recognition. You are placing your hand on the seat of the self that existed before this life shaped you, before fear taught you to be small, before the world told you who you were supposed to be. Have you ever placed your hand on your chest in a moment of overwhelming grief or sudden, inexplicable beauty, and felt something ancient respond? Something that had no name and needed none? That wasn't emotion rising up. That was recognition. That was the seat of the true self answering the call of your own hand. This is exactly why this teaching was buried. Because a person who can access unmediated divine recognition through their own chest needs nothing between themselves and the sacred. No intermediary, no institution, no permission. And a person who needs no permission is impossible to control. I believe this point alone is why Mary was called the One who knew the all. Because she had activated what most people spend their whole lives searching for, in every direction except inward. Recognition without fire, though, cannot sustain itself. It illuminates but does not hold. For that, you need the third point. And this is the point that made me stop completely when I first understood what Mary was actually describing. Above the navel, at the solar plexus. She called it the fire of remembrance, and what lives here is nothing like what you have been told. This is not your confidence center. This is not where your self-esteem lives. What lives here is something older and more absolute than both of those things. Your divine will, your cosmic identity, the part of you that existed as a specific and irreducible expression of the divine before you took a single breath in this world. Jacob Boehme, the 17th century mystic, a cobbler from a small German town who had a vision so total and so shattering that it took him 12 years to find the words for it, wrote about this center of the body with a precision that no formal theologian of his era came close to matching. He described the solar region of the body as the seat of divine will, not human willpower, not determination, not drive, but the original fire of the soul's divine nature expressing itself through the body. His writings were so threatening to religious authority that the local bishop had him permanently banned from ever writing again. A cobbler, banned, because he saw too clearly. In the dialogue of the Savior, the soul that has remembered its origin is described as burning, not with destruction, not with suffering, with clarity. A fire that doesn't consume what it touches. A fire that reveals what was always there, beneath the layers of fear and forgetting. And this is the Gnostic battleground that most people never realize is happening inside them. Right here, at this point above your navel, the false self and the true self are in constant negotiation. The false self, built from fear, from the need for control, from every moment you were told to be smaller than you are, lives here. And the true self, the divine original, the Fravashi, the pneuma, lives here too. In the same place, pressing against each other. Every single day. Mary's teaching on this point is direct. when you feel fear rise in you, when you feel the urge to shrink, when the world presses down and something in you wants to collapse inward, touch this point. Breathe into it, not with the intention of calming down, with the intention of reclaiming, of saying, with your hand and your breath and your full awareness, that the fire here belongs to you and not to whatever tried to dim it. I genuinely believe this is the most suppressed of all 4 points, because a person who has lit this fire cannot be ruled by fear, and a person who cannot be ruled by fear is ungovernable. You become something the systems of control have no mechanism for, and that, throughout all of human history, has been the most dangerous thing a person can become. Fire without memory, though, burns blind. It needs an anchor in something deeper than this life. Mary described the final point in the dialogue of the Savior almost in code, carefully, obliquely, as though she knew even speaking of it plainly was too much. It sits at the base of the skull, at the back of the head. She called it the eye that looks backward into eternity. This is the point of cosmic and ancestral memory. Not memory in the way you remember a conversation or a childhood moment. Memory in the way the ocean remembers the rain, because it is the rain returned. This point in your body is where your soul's full history lives encoded in flesh. Every existence, every origin, every moment between the moment you emerged from the pleroma and the moment you arrived here. Plotinus, the 3rd century philosopher, whose understanding of the soul's relationship to its divine source remains one of the most breathtaking intellectual achievements in human history, described this with a precision that still stops me cold when I read it. He called it the soul's remaining, the part of the soul that never actually left its divine origin, that stayed, even while the rest descended into incarnation. And he located the access to this remaining not in the front of consciousness, not in thought or intention or forward-facing awareness, but in a turning inward and backward, a reversal of the direction most people spend their entire lives moving in. The Gnostic concept of the pleroma, the absolute fullness of divine existence from which all souls originally emerged, is not a place you travel to. It is a signal, and this point at the base of your skull is the body's antenna for that signal. Still broadcasting. Across every life you have lived, across every layer of forgetting the world has laid over you. The signal never stopped. You simply stopped being still enough to receive it. Mary's teaching on why this point is located at the back of the head is one of the most precise things I have ever encountered in esoteric literature. She taught that humans are always oriented forward, into the next moment, the next goal, the next version of themselves they are trying to become. The entire architecture of how most people move through life is forward-facing, always becoming, never being. And in that constant forward momentum, the most essential thing, what you actually are beneath everything you have been told you are, never gets looked at directly. This point asks you to stop, to place your awareness at the base of your skull, to sit in complete stillness, and to ask, not out loud, not as a thought, but as a genuine interior question directed at the deepest part of yourself. What was I before I was born? I have sat with that question more times than I can count, and I will tell you honestly, it is not the answer that changes you. It is the asking, because something in you at that point responds, not with words. That response begins the moment contact is made, not after years of practice, not after perfect stillness, the moment your awareness lands there with intention, with a quality of stillness so deep, it feels like the world briefly stops pretending to be the only thing that exists. 4 points, 1 body, 1 circuit, and Mary was precise about the sequence. You begin at the crown, the gate of the Father, and you open the entry point. You breathe upward, you place your awareness there, and you allow what has always been descending into you to be consciously received for the first time. From there your awareness moves to the chest, the seat of the true self, and what entered through the crown is now recognized. The spiritual heart receives it not as something new, but as something it has always known. This is the moment of recognition. This is where gnosis begins not as an idea, but as an experience happening inside your body. From the heart your awareness drops to the solar plexus, the fire of remembrance, and what has been recognized is now ignited. The divine will that lives here receives the light that came through the crown and was recognized by the heart, and it burns. Quietly, cleanly, with a certainty that has no anxiety in it. And from the solar plexus your awareness moves to the base of the skull, the eye that looks backward into eternity, and what has been received, recognized, and ignited is now anchored in the full memory of what you are. The circuit closes. The signal from the pleroma, which has been broadcasting into you since before you were born, is finally received by a body that is fully awake to itself. The dialogue of the Savior describes this not as an achievement, but as a return. The soul that completes this circuit doesn't gain something it lacked. It reclaims what was always there, beneath every layer of forgetting the world applied to it. I want to be clear about something. I am not giving you a ritual I designed. I am not offering you a system I built. I am giving you back a map that was drawn inside you before you took your first breath, a map that someone worked very hard to make sure you never found. If something happened in you while you were here, I don't need you to explain it or justify it or even fully understand it yet. But if it was real, if something responded, tell me in the comments which point hit you hardest. And if you know someone who has been searching, quietly, privately, without knowing what they are searching for, share this with them. That is how this kind of knowledge has always survived. Not through institutions, through one person recognizing another. Subscribe. Stay close. And I want to go back to that. Someone worked very hard to make sure you never found this map. That someone had a name. Theophilus of Alexandria, the bishop who in 390 AD issued a personal, deliberate order for the systematic destruction of Gnostic and pagan texts across Alexandria. He wasn't threatened by philosophy. Philosophers were everywhere. What threatened him was something far more specific. A teaching that located the divine inside the human body, requires no building, no hierarchy, no appointed interpreter standing between you and what you are. The moment you understand that your own flesh carries the coordinates of your origin, the entire architecture of religious authority becomes optional. Theophilus understood that, which is why he didn't debate these texts. He didn't refute them. He simply made sure you would never read them. That is not the behavior of someone who thinks an idea is wrong. That is the behavior of someone who knows an idea is right and cannot afford for you to know it too. Here is what I keep coming back to. Every moment in your life when something overwhelmed you completely, when the grief was too large for words, when the beauty hit so suddenly it stopped your breath, when the fear arrived before your mind could name it, your body already knew where to go. Your hands moved without instruction. Your awareness collapsed inward to these exact points before you had any reason to send it there. You were never taught this. No one showed you. And yet your body has been performing this navigation your entire life, in your most unguarded moments, with a precision that no ritual could improve on. What she left behind in that text is not a new practice. It is the explanation for something your body has been doing since the day you were born. You were never lost. You were never without access. You were simply never told what your own hands already knew.